Before I hand over mic to Sir, I would give a gentle introduction about Sir, a very brief introduction about our esteemed speaker. Professor Jay Kumar, Professor C. Jay Kumar is librarian at the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, India, and has been with the Institute leading the library team since March 2016. Prior to joining IITR, he was with the Indian School of Business, Mohali campus as Associate Director, Learning Resource Center, Reference Librarian at the Indira Gandhi Center for Atomic Research, IGCAR, Kalpakkam, and also served as librarian at the Radio Astronomy Center, TIFR, Ooty. He started his professional career as a school librarian, Good Shepherd Public School, Ooty, in the year 1984. His interests include the design and planning of libraries, implementing innovative information services, resource evaluation and implementation, and imparting resource discovery. Sir is honorary member of Royal Society of Chemistry Indian Library Advisory Board. Sir is member of IOP, Publishing India Library Advisory Board, as well as member Cambridge University Press South Asia Library Advisory Board. With this brief introduction, I would now invite our esteemed speaker to present his talk. Sir, please.
Thank you, Ms. Seema and Meher, for this opportunity. So, very good morning to all the participants. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, the university authorities for giving me this opportunity. Today, I'll be just touching upon a few aspects of scholarly communication and impact of research, highlighting the few process like peer review process and importance of citation metrics. And also, I'll touch upon little on open access guidelines, which is essential for for faculty and authors, those who are writing papers. And finally, I'll just show a few screenshots of the resource platforms, which you all will be using it. Meher, you could hear me, dear? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Dear participants, once again, a very good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, around the world. I'll just share my presentation. At the end of the presentation, I'm very sure our organizers will help in coordinating the question and answer session. I'll just try to share my session. You just tell me when it's visible. Is it visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Today, I'll be just, as I mentioned, I'll be touching upon, my topic would be scholarly communication and impact of research. As mentioned, you can connect with me at any time at the given email address, library@iitr.ac.in. The building, what you are seeing is our IIT Roorkee's main building. It's a very old college. It started during 1847 and converted into university during 1947. And by 2001, it has been converted into IIT. Okay, so once our pandemic is over, you are most welcome to visit our campus. Roorkee is located very close to Haridwar and Rishikesh, and it is in Uttarakhand state. Okay, with this, I'll just move to next slide. Yeah. Here, I would like to just, you all will be familiar with a concept called information literacy, which is very much essential for each and everyone, whether he is a student, a scholar, or faculty, or library professional, or whoever is this connected with academic and research activity. This information is very highly relevant. And as I mentioned to you, it's common to all disciplines. It is for all learning environment. It's very much essential. And also it's suitable for all levels of education. And this important thing is everyone should have the information literacy competency. That is the power to identify the right resource and competency to search efficiently for your required information need. In that way, this is very common for research scholars and also faculty and also library professionals. And since library professionals are acting as intermediary between the information sources and the users, I think this competency will be very helpful for them to get equipped themselves and also teach the scholars how efficiently the information sources and information management tools and can be used for their research activity. Okay, I'll touch upon few points on that. And that means the information literacy is a continuous process. Okay, you have to be aware of the new development in your own area of research, subject domains, or software platform, or research support softwares, and all. It's a continuous process by which you get equipped yourself so that you can get what you want, and you can also reach the goal of your that is development in your own area of research. Okay, and also it's very important each and every one of you should be familiar with the software platforms or software tools which will be of use to you to undertake your continued research or teaching or any academic activities, right? So this information literacy is very important. With this respect, I think ACRL, Association of College and Research Libraries, a division of, I think a decade back, they have developed a wonderful set of standards. It's called Information Literacy Competency Standards for Higher Education. At later stage, it has been modified as Information Literacy Competency Standards for Science and Technology kind of thing. And over the period, even UNESCO has adopted as information and media literacy standards. So I request you to have a look at those set standards, which is there by ACRL's standard or for Science and Technology modified or UNESCO standard. And all these 5 standards are very specific to information management and information usage. Okay, all these standards are very much relevant to all research scholars and library professionals and faculty and each and every one of you, right? And these standards, when you find time, you just have a look at it. Each and every standards, they come out with a few wonderful guidelines and what it means, and also, evaluation techniques kind of thing, how to evaluate whether you are qualified kind of thing. Okay, please find time to have a look at it. I just listed those things. The first one is the standard competency. You should be competent to determine the nature and extent of information needed. Whether he is a research scholar or faculty undertaking a research or a library professional, whoever it is, one must be clear about what kind of information is needed for his research or further activities, right? And he also should know how to get the needed information more efficiently and effectively. That means you should identify the right source. You all will be familiar. Google search is a wonderful platform to search. Google can give all generic answers. It's great actually. But when you come to serious research, I think you should identify the domain specific or subject specific resources which are available around the world, both as a free and also subscription based, right? And also you also should be familiar with how to use those search interfaces which has been designed by various publishers and societies, right? And also once you do the search and acquire the information, you should be able to critically evaluate the procured information and as a result decides whether you have to modify the research. Here only, that is the search expertise should be improved by yourself in your own domain from your own, that is domain specific platform, search databases kind of thing, right? At the same time, it is very important for every one of us to understand the economic, ethical, legal, and social issues surrounding the use of information and technology. Here, the important point is the copyright and permissions, do's and don'ts. When you use information for your own research, I think you should be following a guidelines for ethical guidelines, how to do research, and also what kind of information you can use, how if it has to be acknowledged if you are taking from other sources. And also you should take permission from the respective copyright owner before reproducing anywhere else, right? Those kind of thing is very much required. That falls under ethical and legal social issues, right? And also understand information literacy is, as I mentioned, it's an ongoing process. It's not a one-time just learning. It's a continuous process. It goes on because a lot of development are happening. So we should be aware of that with respect to resource platform, with respect to handling various software tools and techniques specific to particular subject domain. There are set of software which are useful for chemistry faculties, right? And some of the many other softwares are useful for managing, useful for mechanical engineering students. Those things, along with the information resource databases, they should be become an expert on their particular field so that they can shine in their research activity, right? So please find time to have a look at this set standards for information literacy, competency standards, and its performance indicators. There's wonderful guidelines is being given, right? Then today, some of the points which are mentioned, some of the activities will be of relevance to all of us here, whether they are the faculty colleagues here, or the research scholars, or the library and information science professional. Those who are supposed to act as an intermediary. They have to bring the student scholar community along with to the as close as possible to the information resources subscribed or accessible to their institute, right? So in this, one of the important thing is scholarly communication, especially in science, technology, and humanities, social science. This is a core important activity which is happening over so many decades. It has been standardized by way of publishing in a standard journals, right? So important, the quality of the journal is been determined by a process which is called peer review, which you all will be familiar, which is acting as a that is lifeline to ensure the quality of the content, which will be useful for the research community to grow further, right? And another important aspect is each and every one of us should be familiar with the subject-specific databases and its respective search interfaces. And each and every database you all will be knowing provides individual ID and password creation within that platform. So if you identify 5 important databases or publishers platforms, you please create. First thing is you try to understand what kind of information is available in that platform, how efficiently it can be searched, how efficiently it can be acquired for reuse, maybe in the form of set of articles at the abstract level and other things, so that other software can be used to manage those references, right? And also, as I mentioned to you, once you have individual login ID and password, you have to note down those things in your somewhere, so that you have to use that one, so that you can set your search profile and you can keep on modifying your search profile. By that way, the database provider, whenever he adds a new product, that is content, you will get the information onto your email or RSS feeds. Many services are there. Kindly, especially once you are into the specific serious research, you identify few resources of standard scholarly publishers and also societies. And apart from accessing the resources, you just have your own ID and password to get personalized information services and also alert services, right? It will be very useful for you. And another important component for research activity in scholarly communication, for especially for research scholars, is using any one of the reference management tool. I think it will be nice if you start using from the beginning. When you are doing your master's or starting your PhD, I think you should get familiar with any one of the management software, that is reference management software, bibliographic management software like Mendeley, EndNote, Zotero, and many other things are that. You identify one so that it will be very useful for you to manage the references from the beginning until you write any papers or your thesis. Because whenever you write your thesis or a paper in word processing software, there will be that is app that is plugin which is required. You can add those plugin, for example, EndNote or Mendeley, so that it will help you to mention the references. You can call those references from the Mendeley collection listing at any part of your document, and you can create a list, the bibliography, by click of a button. And also most of the management software tools will be supporting you hundreds and nearly 800 plus citation that is citation styles of various publishers and societies. So it's better kindly become a master of any one of the two, start using from the beginning. And another important component for every organization and also the researcher faculty is when you write paper, please try to have your own ORCID ID, which will identify you in a scholarly communication area. And also when you write your affiliation, it's nice to put the full name of the organization everywhere, so that that particular, whatever product you are writing or whatever article you are writing, it will get mapped to your organization. When some organization is looking for the papers published by them, it will be nice if it get mapped to them, so that they will get a wonderful research output, what kind of output coming like that. So each and every researcher should have their own ORCID ID, which is free, and it will take only few minutes for you to create with all your detail. See, that number you have to mention in every while writing papers and submission, so that publisher will take care of the rest of the activity. In future, whoever search in your name, the papers written by you without mixing with other authors because of same initials, same surname, forename kind of thing, it will be identified, that author name ambiguity will be reduced, right? So this is also very important for you. And as I just mentioned to you, this copyright and permission and fair use is very, very important when you take up the research. For example, when I'm say in a UG students or something that is copying, that is they will take some books and Xerox cover to cover. That's fine to a certain extent for when they are at undergraduate level or something, for their own personal reference or something. When you become a faculty or when you become a research scholar, you have to be very careful. That is, reproducing a book from cover to cover is not advisable, right? You are advised not to keep any Xeroxed books in your bookshelf, because sometimes when you just attend some kind of, if some visitors are visiting and if they are having a look at it, it will give a wrong impression that we are violating copyright. And another thing is, whenever we write a paper, your own paper, because the copyright goes to the publisher. And in the later discussion, I'll be touching upon what kind of level of liberty they are giving to you to share your preprint or post-print kind of thing. I'll touch upon in the coming thing. But at the same time, once your paper is published, your copyright, you are transferring to the publisher. When you want to reuse the portion of it or one image from that, but your own paper to in some other book which you are planning to publish, it's better you send an email to the publisher. They'll be happy to give a copyright permission that you should keep it with you. At the time of asking for copyright permission, what is required by the publisher is which portion you want to reproduce and which publication you are planning to publish in future. Those details you have to provide. They will just have a look at it. If it is genuine, they'll be happy to do that. So I'm just emphasizing, especially with our faculty colleagues, if you want to reuse your own paper content somewhere even small portion or image or graph or data, it's better you take permission from the publisher to whom you have submitted. And right now, everything is comfortable. You can send a mail. By return mail, they will just give you permission that you keep it as a record, right? And whenever you use the soft copy, you just use within for your own reference purpose. And also rehosting of some of the copyright material also not advisable, right? So this also you have to follow. And as you all know, there are set guidelines for research and publication ethics that you should be aware of that, because once you enter into a teaching profession, these are all very important, research and teaching, right? And as you know, many of you will be familiar with using a similarity checking software. Here I would like to highlight Turnitin, Urkun, like that. This software, these softwares are only similarity checking software. It is not a plagiarism detection software. I'm reiterating, it may help us to identify plagiarism. That is different. At the same time, this will tell to what the percentage of content is being reproduced from which source. It will show the similarity only, but the better person to judge whether it is a plagiarism or it's not a plagiarism kind of thing is the supervisor, is the right person, right? For example, 5% similarity mentioned by any one of the software can result in a highly plagiarism, because if the particular important model or important concept is being hijacked if it is being reused without taking permission, that also can be result in a copyright violation or this one. And another thing is, if some similarity checking software shows 50% that similarity, sometimes it may not fall under violation of this one, plagiarism, because it may be that is generic information or introduction or some of the things may be there, right? So you have to have a difference of meaning for similarity percentage and plagiarism. And most of the institute, they discourage plagiarism, right? So these tools can be used to identify the percentage, but the institution or the faculty in charge or supervisor is the right person to go through the content differences and similarity and identify whether it is a plagiarism like that. Then he has to notify his scholar to take permission or to change the course, right? So you should know that this is two different concepts. Plagiarism is different from similarity percentage. For example, if some output is showing 10%, let's say 15% similarity, it doesn't mean you are plagiarized 15%. That is not true, right? And at some of the future slides, I'll touch upon open access initiative guidelines, which is very much useful in our scholarly communication activities and also to our scholars and faculty, right? So here also, I'll just would like to touch upon few points with respect to, since some good number of library and the information science professionals also there. So what is their role? Because they are supposed to support reference and research support services. They should hold hand with the research scholars and also the faculty during their academic and research activity. So you also should equip yourself with what all the various resources available on various domain, but you need not become 100% expert because faculties are there. They will take care of that. But you should know what is what, the basic course database content, how the efficiency of such interfaces. So you should become a teacher. You should teach the scholars how efficiently this research, resources can be searched and made use of that. And at one point of time, you will become a subject librarian. If you are strong in particular subjects, say physics, chemistry, mathematics, or humanities, social science, you can just concentrate on those resources and you can become a specialized subject-specific librarian. Because in some of the institutes abroad and even in India, there are now emergence of engineering librarians, science librarians, arts librarians, something kind of thing, because they are the subject knowledge with subject knowledge about the information sources of databases kind of thing, and they will become very specialized. If any query comes in particular area, that mail will be sent to that particular subject librarian. He will be able to answer with a lot of techniques and guidelines with the screenshots of step 1, 2, 3, something like that, so that our research scholars and faculty will get benefited, right? And as I mentioned to you, you are the person to give a personalized support. Now, right now, the COVID has put a lot of challenges, but at least through online, you should give them a support for the information need with little kind of guidelines to steps 1, 2, 3, something like that. So the rest of the thing, it is their responsibility to become a master, and in turn, they should educate their junior also. Okay. By all this activity, by this way, you are empowering the researchers or the faculty in their research activity, and it should be a part of the academic research journey. You are part of their academic and research journey. They will be, that is acknowledging you. They will remember you forever if you just help them in their research journey. And as I told you, library as a hub for teaching, learning, and research framework, right? So you play an important role to become a helping hand to our scholars, students, and also faculty. Not only that, you are very important stakeholder to the management also to take some of the organizational details. If they want, you should be able to collate the publication detail or citation detail. And you can also play an important role in various committees of academic research or the ranking analytics committee kind of thing. So you should raise to the requirement and play an important role. I wish you all very best at this time to be close to your scholars and faculty in your rendering your librarian professional activities, right? And today's discussion, as I mentioned to you, I will touch upon few activities like a peer review process and also citation metrics, which is very important to our scholars and also faculty and also to the organizations. They are very much interested what is the research output is coming out of the organization, and also how best it is being cited kind of thing. And as I mentioned to you, open access initiative, and there's a thing called Creative Commons guidelines. Those things also I'll touch upon. And Romeo Colors and Juliet guidelines, which is very important for the authors with respect to what extent they can share their preprint or preprint or postprint. And Juliet takes care of the funders guidelines. What is the expectations of funding agencies, right, at international level? And also I'll just show a few screenshots of resource platform, which are domain specific, which you all will be familiar, right? Here comes the peer review process, right? Here, this peer review process is common for 4 different stakeholders. Who are they? Number 1 is authors. What this process does, it is to have their work quickly and fairly assessed by experts before publication. That is their expectation for the authors. And reviewers, who are all the reviewers? Once they are the authors or faculty, once they become expert in that, they will be playing a role of reviewers to support their peers. Yeah, that is the research scholars and the others, those who are contributing papers in the research community by evaluating their work. That is very, very important. Their idea is not to reject. They are supposed to help you to make it better, right? So in that way, for writer, our scholars, when they send a paper, if they get some very strong comments, please don't lose your heart. It's a kind of correcting, that is helping you to make it better. So you take those positive points. If some points, if they are wrong, it's better you just explain to them in the subsequent email. They will do that. So the reviewers, they play an important role. And I also request the senior faculty, those who are specialized in subject areas, you all will be in some of the as a role as a reviewers, and those who are very new to the new faculty, you also look for an opportunity to become a reviewer in your own domain subject of some of the standard journals, right? And there are editorial board members. They play an important role. They are like a mix of members from a company. They will be having, I think, plus some of the subject experts. Their important role is to oversee a fair peer review process, which helps to improve the peers' work. Okay, this way. And ultimately, the beneficiaries are the readers. They should be assured that the published articles have been assessed by subject experts so that the quality is assured, so they can grow from that point of research, right? So this peer review process is very, very, very important. It's a quality controlling measure which has been set in place for a long time by all standard publishers and societies. Okay, once if there is a relaxation of there is no care about peer review, it will end up with this predatory journals and quality less journals kind of thing. So you should just look at upon this peer review. If the particular journal is very strong process of peer review, that means definitely it will be, the quality will be high, right? Excuse me, I'll just jump. Yeah. In this peer review, there are 2 methods. You all will be familiar. Otherwise, for young research scholars, you should know there is a thing called single blind review. Another one is double blind review. In single blind review, the reviewers, that is the expert, those who are going to review your papers, will be knowing your name and your affiliation, which organization you are coming, right? At the same time, you will not know who is going to review your paper. This comes under single blind review. There's another review process. It's called double blind review, where both the parties will not know each other. The reviewers do not know the author's identity. The author does not know who is reviewed by this article. Okay, so there are 2 methods, single blind and double blind, right? And some of the studies shows, especially in the area of physics, the single blind review result in a little additional success rate than double-blind review. The reason may be because once the reviewer come to know about the author and also his affiliation, if he finds any doubts or something, probably it is an opportunity for him to have a look at the author profile and the author's other publication and try to understand what kind of strength he has got. Accordingly, he can also guide him properly. Okay, this is few study has come, still it's not been 100% through. Most of the publishers will follow single blind and few publishers will follow double blind. So research scholars should be familiar with this kind of thing. And whenever you get a feedback from the reviewers, don't get dejected, don't get annoyed. Take guidance from your supervisor, discuss and try to give explanation to the points what they have raised, or you try to improve further and resubmit it so that you will succeed, right? And now I'll just move on to once you are done with your publication with the high quality in a journal or wherever it is. If your paper of high quality, definitely it will receive most of the citations in the forthcoming literature, right? You hope you all will be familiar with citation index. It's an index built upon the related papers. For example, if you take in the image, these papers are there displayed here, pink color, yellow color kind of thing from various different years. Okay, each and every scientific paper will be having a references or bibliography at the end. Okay, those citations or references, the index created by that, those index is called citation index. If you see the set of papers published during 2003, a set of papers are there, which is referring to the previous some links, the arrow mark they given. Similarly, other papers also, 2002 articles also giving some paper. If you connect this, if you relate this paper connected, it will have some relationship. That means if some paper is having more citation in the future years, that means it has got highly value. This is the activity behind that citation index, which all will be using it already. For this little history about that, I want to show. I think library professionals will be knowing about Professor Garfield. So here I would like to just mention about Professor Eugene Garfield for the benefit of our young scholars here. He's considered as the father of citation index and cytometrics. And he's also a founder of Indian Institute of Scientific Information, ISI, and also a journal called, the magazine called The Scientist. Okay, long back. When he was doing some kind of project for medical library, indexing project, he just got an idea whether the citation given at the end of the paper, if it is being indexed, if it has been linked to the original paper, whether it will give you some useful input, insight to the scholars kind of thing, right? So like that, no, during 1962, a pilot project has been started by him. I think someone is using their whiteboard. Organizers can have a look at it. Some lines are coming at the end. Anyway, Science Citation Index has been created during 1963, and it has appeared as a print form in later stage. It was appearing in the Web of Science in a CD, and now it's available in a Web of in a web form. Web of Science is a Science Citation Index current version. And please find time to click the link available here, which will just give more detail about Professor Eugene Garfield. And also there are obituary given there and other things, right? Hello, organizer, I'm just getting some kind of blue color whiteboard kind of thing from one user, Shiv Charan. Can you control it? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the scientist and current contents. Again. Let's see. Hello. Could you able to see my presentation?
Yes, sir. Presentation is visible, sir.
Left side, some blue color lines are coming or no? No, no.
Yes, sir.
No.
Coming. These are coming.
I'm not, somebody else is doing, ma. I'm not doing.
Oh.
Can you arrest it? It is from Shiv Charan, one user. I'll wait for a while. Shiv.
Technical team is requested to please resolve the issue.
one Shiv Charan Kumar or somebody is using his whiteboard and marking some many lines in the screen.
Shiv Charan,
Mr. Kuldeep and Mr. Vishal, please look into the matter and resolve this problem immediately. And
you may please remove the participant, Shiv Charan.
Yes.
Please remove the participant, Shiv Charan.
Yes, remove immediately.
By the time probably I'll stop sharing, again I'll share. Okay, is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Whether it will resolve the problem, let us see. Okay. Again, I'm just sharing. Let's see. Yeah. Could you able to see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Sir, please check.
Now it's clear. I'm just proceeding. Okay. Host, could you see my slide now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
Fine. From here I start. Please find time to know more about Professor Eugene Garfield, which is the father of citation index. As you know, there are a lot of discussion for and against the citation counts because it differs from database to database. For example, in some database, say Web of Science will be showing only 80 of my papers and some citation counts. And whereas Scopus will show 100 of my papers. Whereas Google Scholar, since it has been controlled by me, I can have all my 150 papers. So whenever you look at any citation paper count or citation count, it's better you mention what is the source and when it has been done, because it will be growing continuously. Which time, the timestamp, which year it has been done, right? Please find time to click on this issue to link to know more about Professor Eugene Garfield, especially for the benefit of information science professionals. He's a wonderful person who has only got that idea in creation of citation index, which is playing a vital role in spite of all for and against this criticism against the citation count and other metrics, but still it will stay forever. That is my observation. And here, he is the person behind the publication of these two products. One is the Scientist, the magazine of the life sciences, still it's going on, it's his own product. And if you remember the right side, the current contents, this is the print version of content services has been done by him in early 80s, 70s, and 90s, right? Those days, most of the university library, especially only my senior faculty must be knowing this. This printer, it's a palm size printed document which will come into library. It has got around 8 subdomains like biochemistry, biophysics, and also science, technology kind of thing, engineering. That is engineering. There are 6 versions for life sciences, engineering, technology, physical sciences, arts and humanities, something like that. The importance of this particular journal, that is periodical, is current contents. It will contain the content pages of forthcoming important journal of that particular area, especially in life sciences, whether Nature or any other. Nearly 40 to 50 journals content page will be, once they open the page, it will have the content pages of reprinted. Great advantage of this is at the end, it will have author and their postal addresses. In those days, in the 70s and 80s, so people used to send a reprint request to the author by airmail or post actually. Every author used to have additional reprint of his paper, 50 or 100, supplied freely by the publisher. They will be happy to send that particular paper as a reprint to the research scholars. So research scholars will have the habit of writing, sending a request for this reprint and collecting those one. Usually those papers coming from overseas will have a beautiful, colorful stamp pasted. And by that way, it will improve the connectivity between the scholar and the overseas researcher kind of thing, right? They will become a close contact. They will publish jointly also. These are the old memories I am getting when I just look at this current contents. Okay, it's a very early stage current awareness service which has been initiated by Professor Eugene Garfield. Now everything is coming to you by click of a button, and every content page is available to you at your disposal, right? And here, when it comes to citation counts, it is being considered in various activities. Like if the quality of article can be measured, the citation counts, that is citation impact, average citation per paper or time cited can be taken. And there is a one more metrics is very popular, which I'll just show you in the next slide. It's called Hutch index, which is very popular. It's a simple way of identifying the difference between authors of same domain with same years of experience. Okay, and the same citation count has been taken into account to fix the journal impact factor, which all will be familiar. Still, with respect to journal impact factor, also a lot of discussion, debate, everything is going on, but still it has been be referred as one of the quality, that is a quality measure of a particular journal in particular discipline, right? And this JF, journal impact factor, can be compared within the particular domain journals only, but you cannot compare with one journal of falling under chemistry with one journal falling under, social sciences or something, psychology, something like that, right? It will differ. And here comes Hutch index. Professor George Hirsch is a professor of physics of University of California, San Diego. During 2005, he has just published a paper in PNAS, Proceedings of Royal Academic Society, and which is available at the bottom on this link also. He has proposed, after studying some of the existing literature and some of the Nobel laureate data, he has just proposed the index Hutch, defined as the number of papers with citation number higher or equal to Hutch, as a useful index to characterize the scientific output of a researcher. Here also, the researcher means a researcher in particular domain with similar kind of experiences. Okay, because you cannot compare one senior professor with a young researcher with respect to Hutch index, right? And you cannot compare with expert in one domain with other domain, right? How it has been calculated, I'll just show you now. Okay, what is this Hutch index? How it can be calculated? You take one author, you will be saying one table at the right, is it? And here you take one particular author, just take his published paper and sort it according to the highly cited order. Okay, in most of the databases, especially in Web of Science and Scopus, this facility is there. Once after doing a search, if you by default, most of the databases will show the current paper first, the recent paper at the beginning, and the previous paper will be followed by that. But the right side, there will be an always option, sorting order. If you select highly cited order, you will get, it will be the entire result will be sorted according to the highly cited order. It is one of the best way to use it while literature search, right? So you take one author, take his papers. Right now, I'm just taking 13 of his papers, left side, and just sort it according to the highly cited, time cited. Okay, the left side, the highly cited order or the rank, first rank, second rank, third rank, something like that. Right side, the highly cited, time cited, 20 times. The first rank cited, the highly cited paper having 20 times. Second paper is having 19. Like that, it comes. At one point of time, this highly cited order or the rank and the time cited number will be equal. Okay, this particular value is known as Hutch index. In this particular table example, the 10 of the his papers has been cited at least 10 times. You have to underline the word at least. Okay, over the period, this number will keep on increasing, right? The right side 20 will become 25, then it keep on increasing. Here serial number, this 10 right now will become 11. This 11 will become also, here 10 may become 15 or something. Then once it becomes 11 and 11, it will become, his Hutch index will be 11. Then it keeps on growing. Okay, this is the that is very simple thing is sort all the papers according to the time cited. At one point of time, the ranking or highly cited order and time cited will be meeting. Okay, same value, if you just plot a graph, in x-axis, you put the rank order, paper number 1, 2, 3, something like that. And y-axis, you just put time cited. Usually the first rank paper will be of higher value. Then it comes slowly down, 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 down like that. It will end up with 0 or something. Okay. Once you connect the dots, it will create a curve, right? Once you cut the curve at 45 degrees, it will meet at one point. That is Hutch. Here in this graph, it has been denoted. That means a scholar with an index of Hutch has published a Hutch papers with at least Hutch citations each. Okay. Hope you could get some idea about this Hutch index. It will give you, it is one of the measure only to compare, easiest measure. Instead of taking number of papers published or time cited or average time cited, instead of going to that, if you just say a department and have a set of faculty with a similar kind of experience, if you just identify this Hutch value, it is a simple value of just looking at their level. But still, I'm telling all these citation measures can be treated as one of the measure, but it cannot judge the quality of the faculty or the importance of faculty or something like that, right? So it's very important when you use this count, citation counts, Hutch index, or something like that, we should not just criticize on the basis of this count alone. It varies from situation to situation. It can be taken as one of the measure, that's fine. But at the same time, it cannot be judged as the only one measure, right? Especially difference between scientist and engineering fraternity. Scientists will have more papers and citations, whereas engineers will have more conference papers, more, and also they will also have some of the patents filed against their credit. And also they will also have a lot of projects, installations, many other standards set by them, many other things are there. So the quality of this, our faculty, it differs from department to area to area. It will be decided by the management. Okay. But still, being a research scholar, you should be familiar with all these difference of metrics used in science evaluation, right? And here, where this citation count, Hutch index, those kind of things has been used. So as I told you, it has to be considered as a only one of the measure only. It is cannot be taken for granted as a only judging factor, right? Now, these are used for while awarding awards and honors, and also to give some fellowship. They look at this citation counts, citation, Hutch index, many things are there. And also before allocating project, they also look at what kind of research output you have just come across. And assignments and positions also, they look at this your research output and also its impact in terms of citations, right? And another important component in institutional ranking frameworks, which all will be familiar, like NIRF, National Institutes Ranking Framework, Times Higher Education, QS, FT rankings for management programs, MBA programs, kind of thing. There are various this guideline frameworks. They give very important role for this research output and its quality. Especially in NIRF, one important component called research and publication parameter. In that, they give around 20 to 30% of mark for the publications and also its citations, right? So being an information professional, library professional, and faculty, if you produce high quality papers, definitely those count will help the organization in getting those marks. And this particular institutional ranking is considering this is one of the parameter only. There are other parameters like what kind of perception by others looking at your institute, and what are the academic output they are doing, what kind of social contribution you are doing. Many other parameters are there, but still this publication output and quality of those publications play an important role in getting credit for this kind of frameworks, right? So it is very important. It will be there for some more time, right? And here, as I told you, the citation count is very important, play a role in journal impact factor. I think few days back, this JAF 2021 is out, and still many criticism are there with respect to JCR value and other things, but still it's being referred to one of the things. They take 2 years average, as you all know. That means the citation received by third year for the papers of the previous 2 years is been considered as a impact factor of the particular journal. And it's been, it was a product of Thomson ISI. Earlier it was ISI, then Thomson ISI, now it is Clarivate Analytics. JCR provides the quantitative tools, which all will be familiar. Now, apart from JAF, that is Journal Impact Factor, there are other metrics. You also should get familiarized with that. Instead of 2-year window, if you take a 3-year window value, it is known as site score, which has been available by Elsevier, right? For example, citation received during 4th year for the papers of last 3 years. That value is known as citation score. There is another, as you know, the citation score and journal impact factor will not tell the real truth, the difference between various disciplines. Okay. Once you take particular discipline within the particular subject, if you just see the JF score or CITE score, it may give the ranking. That is fine. Whereas it will not compare one subject to other subject. For that, there are other two metrics, SJR, otherwise known as SCImago Journal Rank, and another one is SINP. Please find time to have a look at this alternative metrics, which has been available on, I think, Scopus platform. All these three values are available along with CITE score, right? You just try to understand what is the difference between this one, right? Which is very important to my scholars there. And as I told you, you are familiar with few database, citation database, Web of Science, Scopus by Elsevier, and other important, this citation database, now it's growing like anything, is Google Scholar. So I request all the scholars, hope, and the faculty, hope you'll be having a profile under Google Scholar. Kindly update those profile. And because by default, first time once you create a profile, it will collect the existing references and it will present in front of you. But it's up to you to validate whether that paper included by Google Scholar is yours or not. You have to say, yes, include or exclude that one. And after that, you can add all your papers manually also if it is not indexed by anywhere else, whether Web of Science, Scopus, Google Scholar. The Google Scholar is managed by you. You can just include so that it will monitor how, what kind of reference the citations are counting. It will just, once anyone sees your profile, they will get your detail comfortably with, say, H index. And also there's one thing called I-10 index or I-5 index. You all will be familiar. It is similar to H index. That is I-10 index means number of papers having 10 citations or more. For example, if I'm having a 100 number of publications under my name, 100 publications, out of which if 25 papers of mine or 30 papers are having more than 10 or more citation, so my I-10 index will be 30, right? I-10 means papers having, number of papers having 10 or more citation. If it is I-5 means papers are having 5 or more citation. These are the metrics they follow in different platforms. Kindly try to understand this. And another important thing you should know, whether they are the scholars or young faculty, the difference between Web of Science, Scopus, and other things, right? And many will be wondering why my paper is not getting included in Web of Science, why Scopus is not having this paper, that paper like that, right? What is the reason behind this? Because every publisher, they follow a set guidelines for including a particular journal into their indexing databases, right? So for example, Web of Science, they have got around 16 basic criteria to include a particular paper. For example, a journal should be made available for last consecutive 5 years continuously, and it should follow a standardized peer review process, and it should meet a criteria of this much citation. So many other things are there. Detail probably you can have a look at it. Whereas compared to Web of Science, Scopus is slightly liberal, and it get accommodated in other journal also. That's why when you search a database for your own papers, the number of papers, the count will be comparatively less in Web of Science when compared to Scopus, right? This all basically because of journal inclusion policies of respective publisher, right? So try to understand that. In spite of that, if you have some of your paper just get missed, you can probably sensitize them. They'll be happy to add those references. But adding particular title, particular journal into the indexing activity depends upon them only, right? And in Web of Science also, you all will be familiar with the emerging source index kind of thing, source citation index. Those things are, there's a next level of journals which may get included over the period to the main Web of Science in future, right? And there are some subject-specific databases which gives this citation count also, like CiteShare, which is important for computer and information science. Then I would like to introduce two other byproducts of both Web of Science and Scopus. There is a product called Insights. It is also by same Clarivate Analytics. They take source data from both Web of Science and also the expanded source citation index, ESCA also. Okay, they just give a wonderful quality that is a benchmarking or analytics platform for especially the organization. These two products will be available, useful actually. SciVal is from Scope Elsevier. They are taking data from Scopus, right? These both products are highly priced subscription based, which will be useful, very much useful for top level management and also the head of the institutes, head of the divisions kind of thing, head of the department to analyze those things. But it's a highly priced product. These are all the analytics and benchmarking platform which will be helpful for you to analyze your own organization. Not only that, you can compare your organization with any other organization to find out where we are standing with respect to publications and also its citation metrics. At single point, you can get all the data like that. For that, you need this kind of platform, right? This is for the benefit of my faculty and scholars. And this particular screenshot, I would like to spend a little more time because the classification within classification. Because classification, my library science colleagues will be very familiar with that. Okay, in segregating book subject according to the book subject in the book rack kind of thing. Whereas with respect to journal indexing, each and every database, they follow a subject schema. Okay, Web of Science follow a Web of Science schema. Earlier, it was having 236 subject categories. And right now, it is having 255 subject categories, right? And you all will know Web of Science is also having product called JCR, Journal Citation Report, which gives the impact factor of the journal value, which takes care of, gives the value of 2 years average of particular publication, right? For example, here impact to 7.596 is one of the impact factor. For example, the journal name is IEEE Internet of Things Journal. This screenshot I have taken very long back. So, and how to compare those a set of journals in particular subject category. As I mentioned to you, Web of Science has just having 255 subject category. Each and every subject category, there will be a lot of journals indexed into that. And another important thing is, while including that particular journal in particular subject category, the journal can fall under one or more subject category. In this particular journal, IEEE Internet of Things Journal, which is there in the center box, which is falling under 3 different subject category, JCR category. It falls under computer science, information systems, and another thing is engineering, electrical and electronic, and also under telecommunication. Okay. Within that particular subject, this particular journal impact factor is been listed, and it is, you can see, rank in that particular category, the second column. That means the under subject categories, computer science, information system, this particular journal is falling as a 3 of 146. And right side you are seeing there is one measure called Q1, like that. This particular journal is falling under Q1 category under 3 different subject categories of JCR or Web of Science, right? And here this Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 will be of interest to my faculty friends here, because within that particular subject category, under particular subject schema of Web of Science, if particular journal is falling under first 25 percentile, it falls under Q1. The second 25 percentile, it falls under Q2. Third quartile fall under Q3. Fourth quartile fall under Q4, right? For example, I'm just look at this one. There's one subject. In particular subject, there are 100 journals are being included, taken with JCR value. If you just sort according to the impact factor, journal impact factor, it will be 1 to 100 will be there. Okay, that is with the impact factor, with the highest impact factor will be number 1, lowest will be at the bottom. There are 100 titles in particular this one. Please be on the line. Ek minute. Ek minute. Professor, I'm on attending a lecture. I'll just call you after some time. Okay, fine. After half an hour. Bye. Sanjeev. Sunny. Okay. Fine. Bye. Kindly just excuse me. I'll just got an urgent call. I'll just join you back. Just relax for a while. I'll join you back. Is it okay?
Yeah, okay, sir. Okay, please. Participants are requested to stay connected, please. Please. And also, you all can see that we have posted an Excel sheet link on the WhatsApp group of all the participants. That link is shared by Professor Dhawal, who will be the next speaker at 12 o'clock. So it is a request from him that all participants should download that Excel sheet. I hope you all have received that. That would be for the second session. And for this session, you may post your queries and stay connected.
Okay. Yes, participant, I am back. Sorry for the interruption. Could you hear me?
Yes, sir, please.
No
please.
problem, sir. Yes.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. There is a very urgent call, so that's why I could able to take a break.
No
Okay,
problem,
thank
sir.
you. Yeah,
Please
I'll just continue. As I just mentioned to you, in one particular subject, if 100 different journals are being included, you just sort those 100 journals within particular subject from high value of journal impact factor to lowest one. Okay. In that, out of 100, the serial number 1 to 25 titles will fall under Q1. Serial number 26 to 50 will fall under to Q2. So serial number 51 to 75 will fall under Q3. 76 to 100 serial number title will fall under Q4. This is the Q1, Q2, Q3 classification within particular subject category of particular subject schema followed by a particular database, right? Hope you understand. For example, instead of 100 titles, if that particular subject is having 103, what happens? The first, it will divide into 25. The remaining one count, that is will be added to Q1, Q2, Q3. The fourth will have only 25. So first Q1 will have first 26, Q2 will have second 26, Q3 will have another 26, Q4 will have only 25 titles of the listing. Hope you got little about the difference between Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 classification within that particular subject under a particular database, right? This is what Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 stands for. Don't get bewildered if somebody says that I'm in publishing Q1, Q2, Q3 like that. The best thing is you try to publish a paper indexed by this standard, scholarly citation database. That's fine, but try to improve the quality. If you are publishing Q4 paper, your attempts will be to identify some titles which are in Q3. You try to move there. Then you try to move from Q3 to Q2. At one point of time, you will become a master. You will be continuously publishing in the top Q1 or Q2 papers only, right? Thank you for your patient listening. I'll just move upon next slide. Okay. I think my screen got stuck. Okay, I'll just try. Probably I'll just stop sharing and share again, okay?
Okay, sir.
My screen is not moving.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah, now it's up. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, now it's moving. I am back. And now I'll just spend a few minutes with respect to Open Access Initiative or OAI, which is very important for the benefit of our scientific and engineering faculty here. And during 2001, 2, 3, and other things, there was a lot of discussion about the importance of open access. That is, the papers or research comes out of the public funding, which should be made available, publicly available, because most of the research output is subscription based. It is not even, author may not be able to access his own paper, right? If he has got his subscription is done by his organization, he will get access to the journal. Otherwise, it may not be possible. Those are the days. Over the period of time, there are a lot of meeting has happened during 2001. Here I just listed out Budapest and Bethesda and Berlin. It's called B3, it's called. Those has resulted in a brainstorming session among the authors, reviewers, editorial board members, subject specialists, and they just come out with this one. The government funded research should be made available kind of thing. And it has carried over to so many years over the period. And there are many funding agencies has mandated guidelines for making the research output funded by agencies should be made available to the public good, actually, something like that. So please have a look at this history. And out of this, there are various type of journals started appearing, open access journals, free or APC. So this publishers has come out with a different model. They are ready to make the paper freely available for everybody, but only thing is they want to charge article processing fee, which is a very high price. For example, approximately $3,000 they charge. Okay, and from the beginning it will be available under open access. And there are open access repositories which will be having the preprint or postprint for the benefit. Okay, these are the few. Then hybrid journals also is available. There are various type of journals, hybrid journals, and open access and different guideline. Green open, gold open. I think it's fine. You please find time to have a look at it. But today's discussion, I will touch upon few things called. There's a in most of the document which is freely available on internet, they'll be having a symbol called CC, which stands for Creative Commons, right? C means copyright, righted product. If it has got CC means you can use that soft copy to a certain extent with the kind of guidelines what is given, terms and conditions at the right side. For example, if it has got a CC symbol with one human means, they are simply asking you to mention the source and reuse it wherever you want. Okay, and there's a called no derivative works. And here they say you should not make any changes. The same thing you can be used. And share alike. What they are telling is you can share same thing as it is along with the link. And the fourth symbol, you should not be commercial use. These all the sub guidelines with Creative Commons. Please find time to understand the differences. And when you want to make your own output under CC license, that making it widely available to everyone. So you can also include this copyright symbol guidelines so that it will be made available to all. CC, if it has got some document, you can use it with some kind of guidelines which is given at the right. Please find time to have a look at the differences because it's important for the research scholars and the young faculty. And majority of the publishers now, they are allowing archiving policy. Okay, journal articles subject to condition. The next slide, I will show the difference. And in most cases, they allow archiving of the author's final version. And most of the person, no, they will not allow you to host your own PDF, that final PDF, but they will allow you to give a final accepted version to certain condition in the institute, in your own public personal website or institutional repositories or subject repositories, right? And few publishers also have an embargo period. You cannot do for 6 months or 1 year, something like that. After that, the final version can be published. For that, you need some guidelines. For that, there are in the University of Nottingham, there's a project called Sherpa. So please find time to have a look at the guidelines, www.sherpa.ac.uk. Here, you could see the Sherpa services. There are 4, Romeo, Juliet, Open Door, Sherpa Search, many things are there. In that, I'll touch upon little on that. There are 2 important component guidelines under this Sherpa is Romeo color differences. Because once you go to the link here, Sherpa services under Sherpa services at the left side, under Romeo, if you click, it will give a list of publishers around the world and which category they follow. That means what kind of permission they give to the faculty or the researcher to share their preprint or postprint or reprint. If they fall under green, the faculty can share the preprint and postprint, and blue means they can share the postprint. Yellow means they can archive, that is only preprint. In all this preprint, postprint, it can be done with the authors, their own website or their organizational website or the subject specific repositories, right? Or institutional repositories, whatever it is. And there are still few publishers, they follow white archiving policy. They will not permit any of their format, whether it's a preprint or postprint. That is final accepted version also, we cannot do that. So you all should be familiar with the preprint, postprint, reprint. Preprint is the format which you supply, that is provide in Word or latex format to the publisher. Postprint is the final, that is version, final accepted version. Reprint is the one which finally appears in the journal with volume number, page number, and everything. Now, all the things are in electronic format, okay? So you can try to differentiate each other and try to consult this Romeo guidelines color, which is a publisher falling under which category. Accordingly, you are free to share the preprint or postprint in any of the thing according to the guidelines. Okay, you have to adhere to the guidelines of the publishers. And for this categorization and listing has been provided by Sherpa project here at this thing under Romeo link, right? And if you just take the statistics here, in particular, during a few years back, it was more than around 40% of the publishers, they support you to, they fall under green category. That means they will allow you to share their own preprint and postprint. They will allow you to share, not the final reprint, right? And another one is blue, 40%, around 33%. And yellow color, there are 7%, and still around 20% publishers are following white. They will not allow you to share any of your preprint or postprint final version, anything, no, because they fall under that category. That gives you an idea. And there's another service called Juliet, which gives the funders guideline. Whoever is taking funding from other agencies, right now, I think DBT and Department of Science and Technology, DST and DBT of India has been included. But overseas, hundreds of publishers, they have given, there are societies, they have given that guideline to what extent you are supposed to share the funded project, because most of them will mandate the funded project research output should be made available as an open access. So what you can do once you get the funding, you please try to add small component for this API charges also, so that it will be comfortable for you to address the requirement of the funders, and also it will be easier for many people to access your paper, which will attract more citations, right? I think in your future projects, it will be nice because of the mandate of various agencies and other publishers. It's better to add small component of your project funding towards the APC charges. If some publisher is not charging APC, it's well and good. If it is an open access from the gold open access something, it is fine. But still, most of the publishers, in order to maintain the quality, especially, nothing can be made free. If they want to sustain the quality, if they want to sustain the editorial process, automated and making available the service, they need money. So what they do, they try to take money from the authors as APC charges, or if they get fund from some funding agency. So they will make from the beginning open access because they need some money for their sustainable progress, right? This is very important. So being a faculty and my scholars, please have a look at these guidelines for under Sherpa and Romeo and try to adhere to that, right? And now next 5 minutes, or a few minutes, I'll just show you quickly few e-resource platform. My request would be, I request all the research scholars and faculty, whichever platform you identify or whichever publisher site you are very close to your area of research, please spend 5 minutes to understand more about their such platform. It has got most of the platform, they come out with a very user-friendly database, but only thing is they use different terminology, different search boxes, different kind of alert services, different kind of its look and feel kind of thing. So you just try to use it, try to explore the online guide, spend 5 to 10 minutes, you become a master. Once you are mastered with that particular platform, you please create your own ID and password within that particular platform to get highly personalized and alert services. For example, this IEEE site is accessible to my institute. So my users within my institute network, they need not worry about searching and accessing all the journals, standards, IEEE standard or conference papers, whatever it is. They can do it here. But if they want to get personalized alert services in particular topic, they have to create an account. Every platform at the right top corner, they'll be creating an account. Most of the resources provided to you by your organization is IP based network number. If you are within the network, if you are using some remote access facility, you can access all the subscribed material. That is fine. But each and every product will have a personalized user creation account. You create it. That will help you to give your own area of research interest keywords. So whenever the new article has been added, it will be delivered to your email box, or you can set a RSS feeds kind of thing, right? So personalized and alert services can be done only by registering yourself as one of the user. Only thing is you have to remember which platform, what is your ID password individually for your own future use. Otherwise, the resources subscribed by the institute or by library is available to you without having any account. Directly, you can go to the site. It will identify from which organization you are coming. It will give free access to you. You can access, download, reuse, whatever you want, you can do it, right? And here comes Springer. The previous one is from Elsevier Science Direct. They are also keep on changing, and you will see the difference. Probably right now, when you visit Elsevier, they may have different screens, landing page there, Science Direct. Science Direct is a single platform which gives access to journals, books, and reference material, everything, right? This is for Springer Link. And here comes American Physical Society, APS, and it has got an interface like that. And here there's an ACS publication. There's a search interface with also browsing and other things. Once you have got access to some of the publishers' platforms, you try to explore its search interface so that you can become a master. Once you are a master, you please help your juniors so that it will save a lot of their time. Here, there's a product called SciFinder, which is abstracting a database for chemistry, chemical engineering, then material science, biotechnology kind of thing. And it's a very important database for chemistry, chemical engineering, right? And MathSciNet for maths. And here ASTM is a society for mechanical and testing material, which is useful for mechanical engineers and other engineering fraternity. Apart from publishing journals, they are also setting a lot of standards publisher. It's very important document thing for the engineering fraternity. And ASME also very important thing for mechanical engineers. And this is for civil engineer, ASCE. So try to explore various search platforms of various scholarly publishers and also societies to understand more about the such features and alerting features. I think with this, I just stop my screen. I'm ready for any interaction. I request the organizers to coordinate. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you, sir. Now it is open for questions. Sir, there are a few questions in chat box, if you can see. Otherwise, I can also read them out.
Please read it.
Yeah. So there is a question from Nitish Singh Pawarji. It's a request to give 5 journals which are good in the field of library sciences.
Okay. For this, actually, you can just refer any one of the Web of Science subject category, library and information science. The listing can be given. Probably I can just do the needful because it is available. You have to go to Web of Science subject category. If you select, then under that library and information science, you can see that. But if you have access to JCR, Journal Citation Report, this task will be easier. Probably I can you just send your email address to me, library@IIT. I will just send all the journals covered by both this on Web of Science or Scopus team. Okay, it is possible. That means those journals got indexed by them only. Okay, those things I can do. No problem. Yeah.
So there is another question by Dr. T. Muthu. Google Scholar citations can be manipulated by an author. Is it so?
Yeah, I will tell you. Google Scholar citations cannot be manipulated, but the individual author, that is your papers, it is under your control. You can add any paper, but that count has been mapped by Google's intelligent background algorithms only. You cannot manipulate, but still, no, the self-citation, if you write another paper, if you mention your own previous 10 papers in that, definitely it will find a place in the later time. Okay, this all depends upon self-citation and other things, but citation count, if they do that on their own. Okay, at the same time, you will have control to include your paper or exclude some paper from your listing. That can be done. The count shown by them is been devised by the Google Scholar team only.
Sir, there is another question by Dr. Mubarak.
Yeah.
Sir, can you give some of the valid journal finders for commerce and management?
Okay, I think both the platform journal finders, there are some, I think I was not getting it. The Web of Science journal finder, there are some tools available for that. And Web of Science, that is, I think, EndNote platform provides those identifying the subject kind of thing. I think those platforms can be used for that.
Sir, there is a request from participants to share your email ID, please.
Yeah, it is library. You can type in the chat box, library@IITR.
Library@IITR.ac.in.
Yeah, please keep sending your queries. I will try to provide the link or source link or possible. Okay. Anything else, Ma? Please.
Another question, is there any journal finder in the field of law?
I think I'm yet to explore. I'll get back to you, right? You can please send a mail to me. I'll just explore, right? Because explore this, especially law, especially those laws, library will be having some idea. I'll try to find out. No problem.
And in addition to that, there are many, can we create individual account on Web of Science?
If you have subscription, definitely you can create. Yeah. If your organization has got access to that, okay, then you can create your own ID password. You set your profile for citation alert, everything can be done. For that, Web of Science subscription is essential by your organization. I think most of this ESS universities and others, they got access through Web of our ESS, ESO Chindu, MHRD consortium. Yeah.
I think all the queries have been resolved.
Yeah.
If there's just, I received one question. If preprint, just give me 1 minute.
Please.
If preprint is still there after rejection of paper, then can we send it to another journal?
Preprint actually, it's better not to store any of your preprint in any of the server permanently, because it will show the similarity, which will give you problem, right? Only after acceptance, probably it will be a good way to just store it, get permission, take the permission. That is, if permission is there from the publisher, please have the preprint. Otherwise, this will create a similarity problem. Immediately, second agency will not allow you to have your preprint in somewhere else, right? So you have to be very careful in having a storing in the preprint before publishing it. Best thing is you just try to get some acceptance of some paper, okay? Then look at their permission. If they allow preprint, then you just store it in the preprint archive somewhere, right? That will be the good idea, because otherwise, it will clash. It will reduce the chances of acceptance by other thing. Because once they search your new input, because most of the publisher, they expect you to send your input to them first, not to the preprint server. That is the difference. You should be aware of this. Hope I just touched little point. Yeah.
Another question is there any difference between peer-reviewed and refereed journal?
Both are same. Both are same.
Another query is that a paper got selected for conference, but it was not published. Can you send the same paper somewhere for publication?
Okay. Can you repeat the question, ma'am?
Someone sent a paper in the conference and it was selected for conference, but it was not published in the proceedings or somewhere. Can the same paper be sent somewhere else?
For that, it's better you take permission from the conference organizers, because usually what happened, the conference organizers will take long time to make it available in a print or electronic form. If they are already having a plan like that, it's better you send a mail to them, take their clearance. At the time, they will tell whether they are going to publish or not going to publish, or they will allow you to republish somewhere else, right? You have to take their permission, the organizers of earlier conference. But at the same time, you can probably add value to the previous conference paper and freshly you can submit to other. That is the another way. Once you submit a paper to any conference, you should not send the same content to other conference if because of the reason others are not publishing. That's not acceptable.
Sir, another question is, let us say the publisher has stored the preprint somewhere. What can you do in that case?
Okay, for example, then you have to connect with the publisher to request them to remove it. Only because usually whoever is submitting with some platform, only they will have full control. We may not have the control. I think you have to ask them to remove permanently from their server so that you can resubmit to some other thing. This has to be done. Yeah.
I think all the queries in the chat box have been effectively answered, and and plus, in addition to the queries, there are so many thank you and complimentary comments from the participants that the session was really informative. So there's another question. While sending a paper to a journal, what matters? Impact factor or status of the journal?
Can you repeat it once again, Ma? Yeah.
While sending a paper to a journal, what matters? Impact factor or status of the journal?
The important factor is the content, your idea. That is more important than any other factor. That is according to me. If the paper content is of your own idea, your own value, definitely it will be taken by all the publishers. The content, the research content, what you are giving to them is more important. Don't worry about this numbers, okay, number game, okay. Just identify a good quality paper, and if you give quality content, definitely they'll be happy to accept, right? And another thing is what, as I told you, it's better to look at the indexed journals, Scopus or Web of Science indexed journals. And with that, again, you can look at the sub-classification like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, something like that. You attempt for Q4, then you try to grow to Q3 or something. Okay, that can be another application.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Fine, Ma. And a few words from my side, actually. I take this opportunity to thank the organizers of the university authorities and Seema and Nagar Singh for connecting with me, and the participants for your valuable time and listening to me. I wish you all very best for the wonderful research journey and other things. Please connect with me for any of the support.
Sir, excuse me, sir. Kindly guide us regarding ORCID, ORCID, which is demanded.
Okay. You just go to ORCID website. You create, it has got a help file. You can create yourself, ma. Yeah.
So why it is necessary, sir? What is the relevance of ORCID?
Yes, I will tell you. In order to avoid author name ambiguity. For example, the paper written by me, you all will be known by same name. There are many people will be there. Okay. And many subject categories. So classifying will be comfortable for them. The papers written by you will be kept in one place comfortably, so that mapping will be easier. If somebody searches for Dr. Sunita Sujata of some faculty, some subject of particular organization, if the name of Sunita or Sukija of many more, 5 more names are there, it may not get mixed up. Okay, to avoid.
So can it be a gallery for our papers?
Pardon, ma?
Is it a gallery for our papers?
Yeah, once you have your ID, ORCID ID, if it has been mapped by many of the publishers, once you go to your own profile at ORCID, the papers will be listed there automatically. That's the great advantage of that.
Sir, one more thing, that in a good papers, there is no publication fees, but sometimes they demand the fee, you can say processing fee. Is it necessary to pay them, or without, or we should reject that journal? Why?
Yeah, those who are asking for fee, you try to avoid them. That's what. For any kind of name, they will say journal processing fee or author fee or author support services kind of thing. You try to avoid them. If your paper, you have got a quality paper which fit into subject, you just try to avoid these charging mechanisms, which is not
nowadays a good journal even demand processing fee, no publication fees, but they demand the processing fee also. So that's why there is a question in my mind: was it a good to
if you feel it benefits you, if it is a nominal charge, or if you get support from your organization or some project, it can be considered. There is no hard and fast rule. But what I'm saying, if somebody has got only commercial value, sacrificing the quality, don't go to that side at all. That's my request. Nothing else. If they charge some kind of nominal charge for their own maintaining quality and other things, please go ahead.
Okay.
Nothing wrong in that.
Thank you for your value answers. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. So at this point of time, I request my participant, if you are really interested in my presentation, please connect with the organizers at the end of the program. So they will be ready to share the PDF format of my presentation to you. Okay. Or any subject query. Is it okay, Meher?
Definitely, sir. We will share them.
Okay. And thank you once again. I wish you all very best. Thank you.
Jaikumar sir,
Yes,
I must say